Apothecary podcast. Authentic chat about medicines, pharmacy and healthcare in the UK.
Pharmacists Jamie, Gimmo and STC take on topical and controversial stories but keep it edgy yet light-hearted.
Podcasts share their desert island drugs and joyful patient stories.
Welcome to the Oral Apothecary podcast. My name is Jamie Hayes. Coming up in today's episode, we're joined by Dr Diane Ashiru-Oredope. Diane is Lead Pharmacist for Antimicrobial Resistance and Healthcare-Associated Infections at the UK Health Security Agency and the Global AMR Lead for the Commonwealth Pharmacists Association. We will welcome Diane in a moment as she shares her desert island drug, her career anthem, and recommends a book for the Oral Apothecary Library. Our micro-discussion this episode will ask, what do you do when you don't know what to do? As we look at managing uncertainty and mitigating overtreatment in antibiotic overuse. I'm not quite sure how we've pulled it off, but it's World Antimicrobial Awareness Week, and we've got an episode looking at antibiotics, and our guest is an internationally respected antimicrobial stewardship expert. On that note, let me welcome my two fellow apothecaries. STC is in Bournemouth and Gimmo is in Cardiff. Welcome both.
Evening.
I gotta say it's not just thrown together.
I didn't know that. I didn't realise that.
I did.
Yeah, but did you know at the time when you scheduled it?
Yes.
Oh, I don't believe that for a minute.
This is true. I have a trainee pharmacist with me, and guess what their project is and why they're doing it? Because it always fits at this time of year. So yes, I did know.
Well done.
Well done to you.
Well, I was just going to talk about how I finally got to see the new James Bond film. So it was very good. Don't know if you've seen it yet. Talking about how opportunities are starting to come in our way. We got the possibility of doing a stand at a science festival, the three of us. So we're going to look at that, aren't we? Maybe in the new year. Could be a new venture. So ask me why I've been eating sauerkraut, standing on one leg and playing more computer games. I got a podcast for you, Steve. It's called Just One Thing. It's a great podcast. I forget his name now. Michael Mosley, is it the guy who did the intermittent fasting stuff? He's got a great podcast. It's on BBC Sounds called Just One Thing. And so he talks about just one little thing you can do each day to improve your life. So you eat sauerkraut because it improves your microbiome, and that's supposed to be very good for your, not only for your gut health, but for your mental health. You stand on one leg while you're brushing your teeth because it's very good for your core and it improves your balance. And you play computer games because it's been shown to improve concentration. So it's great. Just One Thing. BBC Sounds, Michael Mosley. Recommend that.
Going to listen to that. Jane, what have you been up to?
I've got a few things, sorry. I had a locksmith round last week to fix the lock on the back door, and as I was watching him at work, I asked him, I said, how long does it take to become a locksmith then? I said, how long is the apprenticeship? Because I was really impressed by his expertise, and he, quick as a flash, said 44 years. And I thought, what a great answer. What a great answer. I'm going early with a book recommendation, which may be the first of 3 books from me this episode, so I apologise in advance, but one that I need to bring to our listeners' attention is the book about getting older by Dr. Lucy Pollock, consultant geriatrician from Somerset. Add it to your list, and I would even, for our practicing clinicians out there, I would bump it up to near the top of your list for quite an early read. Steve has just acknowledged the practicing clinician with his hand up, very cute. It's the book about getting older by Dr. Lucy Pollock, and Lucy's on the overdiagnosis group with the Royal College of GPs as well. I've been attending the Value in Health Week. Dr. Sally Lewis, our guest from a couple of episodes ago, features heavily throughout the week, but it was today's session chaired by Dr. Andrew Carson-Stevens that left me with this quote. The session was on optimising health literacy to improve outcomes. Health literacy is a modifiable risk factor. The more we interact with it, the better it gets. So I quite enjoyed that. Let's move on. It's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Diane Ashiru-Oredope to the Oral Apothecary. You can read Diane's full bio in the show notes, but some highlights for you. Diane is, as I said, Lead Pharmacist for Antimicrobial Resistance and Healthcare-Associated Infections at the UK Health Security Agency. She's an international player on all things antimicrobial resistance. I'm paraphrasing now. She is the Global Antimicrobial Resistance Lead for the Commonwealth Pharmacists Association. She developed and leads the International Antibiotic Guardian campaign, now in its 7th year. In 2015, Diane was awarded Public Health Pharmacist of the Year, and in 2016, Outstanding Woman in the Public Sector at the 10th Precious Awards. She has delivered 2 very impressive TEDx talks at TEDx NHS and TEDx London Business School, and is currently leading on an evidence review on pharmaceutical public health on behalf of the 4 UK Chief Pharmaceutical Officers. Welcome to the podcast, Diane. Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
What's on your agenda at the moment then?
Well, I have a portfolio career. It's what I've built over the years, and I love what I do. Absolutely love being a pharmacist. So it's really difficult to say one thing. What I will do, though, is limit it to one something in each of my roles. So in my UKHSO role, what's really on my agenda now is World Antimicrobial Awareness Week, which starts from the 18th of November all the way to the 24th of November. I have led on this week for the last 12 years, and each year gets better, more exciting, and just great to see colleagues really interacting with it. During this week, on the 17th of November, we published the ESPAR report. So that's the English Surveillance Programme for Antimicrobial Use and Resistance, and we have the national surveillance data on antimicrobial use, antimicrobial resistance, as well as antimicrobial stewardship interventions published within that report. So that will be published. And that is really, those two things are critical now because we are going through the final stages of getting that ready so that we can, at midnight on the 17th of November, it hits published. And really some of the data from the report has been quite interesting for us and really needing us to think about what the implications are. We know that there have been significant deaths from COVID, but antimicrobial resistance is what we are calling a hidden silent pandemic because we know that across the world, 700,000 people die from antibiotic resistant infections. And this could rise to more than 10 million deaths annually by 2050 if we don't take action. And that was through an international review done. But in the English surveillance report, we show that antibiotic consumption reduced in the community during COVID, the initial stages of the pandemic. And this highly correlated with reductions in seasonal respiratory tract infections, but also the restrictions in social mixing, changes in health-seeking behavior, access and delivery. However, in hospital and in secondary care, there was a significant increase in antibiotics, particularly those of the watch category. So these are the ones that are more prone to resistance developing to them and a broad spectrum antibiotics. And also we had an increase in proportion of bloodstream infections that were resistant to one or more antibiotics. So the data for us has been challenging and really trying to ensure that we continue to highlight the importance of us taking action.
Diane, I was amazed when in your TEDx talk you talked about that even now it's thought that there are 5,000 deaths in the UK due to antibiotic resistance. I was aghast when I saw that number.
Yes. When you now think about COVID numbers, it pales almost into significance. But to think about what I say to people now is that COVID has given us, particularly in the beginning, gave us the reality of what life without effective antimicrobials is like, because that's what we had. We had no vaccines, we had no treatment. And that's what happens with some infections where they know the last resort antibiotics or antimicrobials no longer work. And that's already occurring across some parts of the world.
Dan, without giving us the whole TED Talk back, just very quickly so summarise what your TED Talks covered and just the scenario really, or the case study that you went with.
So with my TEDx talks, I focused around what individuals can do. So the fact that we can all take action. So I set the scene in terms of the challenges. And then I highlight that individuals can take action and groups can take action. And I provide examples for that. I talk about my own children and the fact that, they very early on became Antibiotic Guardian champions in their reality. And in fact, recently, my son got a cut and my daughter very quickly said to him, his older sister said to him, you need to go and protect that because you don't want to lose your arm, like the story that I'd shared in my TEDx talk.
There's a great book called Make It Stick. I'm sure you've read that, Jamie. Is it Chip and Dan Heath? Is that right?
That's right.
And you start your TEDx story with someone picking a scab, and it was textbook because I was gripped from that moment on, and I'll remember that TED Talk. So not only is it a fantastic TED Talk on antimicrobial resistance, it's a fantastic sort of masterclass in how to tell a good story to get your case across.
And it's a real life story of impact of why tackling antimicrobial resistance is not just a job for me. It's actually why I'm passionate about it as well.
That comes across, Diane. What about the international work, Diane, that you've got going on?
Yes. So in my global health role, I work as a global antimicrobial resistance lead for Commonwealth Pharmacists Association. What's on my agenda there at the moment is we are writing letters to the health ministers for 8 African countries because the program I'm the technical lead for, the Commonwealth Partnerships for Antimicrobial Stewardship, is supporting antimicrobial stewardship. It's a UK partnership approach. So UK institutions support institutions in African countries in this particular program. But we went from 4 African countries from 2018 to 2020, and we've now got an extension and we've got 8 African countries. So we're writing the letter and it's trying to balance the technical information about tackling AMR with getting the support of the health minister and the health ministries for that. And then we got news this week that a grant application that we'd made to support developing antimicrobial prescribing app for 22 countries, all of them in low middle income countries, has moved to the next phase. So I am not panicking at the amount of work that this is going to involve, but really excited to be able to contribute in that way. And you talked about the evidence review that I'm leading on for pharmaceutical publication public health, I need to provide a report in December. And one final thing that is on my mind, constantly on my mind, is trainee pharmacists. So I support trainee pharmacists yearly, and there's a long story to that. But the basic part to it is that in 2016, I went to a GPHC event where they talked about the fact that Black pre-registration pharmacists have a disproportionate gap in their pass rates compared to other ethnicities. And for 2 years, I just sat and hoped the results would change. And I call it moaning for 2 years, because I'm a parent and a former student and just understood that the challenges. And at that time, it's 30%. That's equated to 70 trainee pharmacists who were called pre-regs in those days. But eventually, one of my mentees asked if I could mentor him and his friends when he became a trainee. And I said, no problem. And 5 of them turned to 30. And now we have about 80 to 100 each year. The reason why it's on my mind is that they have the November exam is next week. So there are about 30 of them taking that exam. So we have weekly quizzes, and we have a team now of other early career pharmacists who are supporting them. So very excited for them, but constantly on my mind as well.
You've got your own school of pharmacy.
Pharmacy. No, I'm just there to mentor, encourage, and yeah.
It's like Nanny McPhee.
And you've got time to come on the Oral Apothecary as well. That's very impressive.
Took some tracking down, mind. Took some tracking down.
Well, thank you.
I mean, that sounds fantastic. So is this your first sort of year with the pharmacists?
No, it's my 4th year.
4th year. So in terms of outcomes, are you seeing some results?
Yes, we are seeing results. I mean, it's very difficult to track because they don't pay to be part of this. It's completely free. So some of them come on, they stay throughout, some of them engage or not. But what part of our successes is that there was a research group we had last year of about 11, and every single one of them passed the exam. So what's often the case is that those who were initially less engaged, but through challenges, we were able to support them even more because we put an intensive support process in place for those who are restating the exams. And then actually a group of first timers as well, 2 groups of first timers, all 100% passed there. We don't always get people feeding back to us. And as you know, it's a free service, so it depends. But we are happy and content with what we are getting.
So, Diane, listening to all that, and I hear the commitment and the motivation. Who supports you then, Diane, in delivering for all those very lucky individuals?
So there were 3 early career pharmacists when they finished 2019 who agreed to support. So there were 3 of them and myself who supported the Provia, the provisional registration group, which we went over for 2 years. And then very quickly after that, we had another cohort. But now there are 17 early career pharmacists, all within the first 3 years of qualifying, who give back because they were part of the group during the pre-reg year, and now they give back. And I've been so blessed and impressed by this year's cohort, by what we're doing this year. And they are coming up with a range of additional support for the pre-reg, for the trainee pharmacists that I could not cope with. There's just no way. So we have weekly quizzes. If there are people that are struggling financially, we do provide them with funding for their mock exams, which at the moment I do that. But in terms of getting on Zoom together for them to get mentoring, to get to practice questions, to challenge each other, that's all done. And then we have a WhatsApp group. So really, I could not do this on my own, but there is that significant responsibility on me for the strategic direction for the group.
So impressive. But can I just say, you can't do anything without a WhatsApp group these days.
We tried Telegram the first year, it didn't work. People were just not on there, but WhatsApp has been really good.
The Oral Apothecary is sponsored by Jamie Hayes Executive Coaching and OneLessPill.com.
Absolutely fabulous. I mean, that is such an impressive things that you're doing, in it, like international as well. So well done to you. I mean, we all know how hard it is to do multiple jobs, but fantastic stuff. So as I'm sure you know, if you've listened to any of the Oral Apothecary podcasts before, one of the pleasures of coming onto the Oral Apothecary is to give us 3 things for the listener, or not for us, but for the listener. And the first one starts with a desert island drug. And if you realize that this is not about saving somebody on a desert island drug, this is about something that evokes very powerful memory for you. So what would you like to give us as your desert island drug, Diane?
It is cimetidine and polyethylene glycol 400, which is an excipient. And the reason is because, it seems really random, is because those were the focus of my PhD research for 3 years. And as part of my PhD research, I found out that low doses of the excipient, so excipients are meant to be inert, but we found that PEG 400 isn't, or I found that PEG 400 isn't, at less than 1.5 grams, and that this enhances the bioavailability of cimetidine in male subjects, but not female subjects. So there was no difference in bioavailability in the presence of PEG 400. So thinking about this, I was really recently looking at my PhD thesis, and I summarized it by saying the findings challenge the inert, inactive state